It's time for Getting Down to Business with Mark Mondo. This new show discusses trends, technology, and tactics to help the listener learn more about improving sales, saving money, and fulfilling a personal mission through entrepreneurship.
Welcome to Getting Down to Business with Mark Mondo on WVLP 103.1 FM. I'm your host, Mark Mondo. We're on the air in Valparaiso, Indiana, and you can listen to us streaming on the website at wvlp.org or use the TuneIn app on your mobile device and look for WVLP. 103.1 FM WVLP is a local nonprofit radio station based in Valparaiso, Indiana. This show, like many of the shows on WVLP, are made possible by the generosity of donors and underwriters. We accept donations at wvlp.org. Simply click on the support tab and make a one-time donation or sustained pledge to WVLP. All donations are tax deductible. Underwriters are made up of businesses and organizations that support the shows on WVLP. Getting Down to Business with Mark Mondo would like to thank Homes by Hortensia, a Coldwell Banker affiliate in Porter County, Indiana, for their support. Homes by Hortensia has served the region's residential real estate needs in Indiana for over 12 years. Contact Hortensia Moreno or Tiffany Zarayo at 219-249-5118 or visit homesbyhortensia.com. Homes by Hortensia, habla español. Welcome to today's show, where I want to share real stories of entrepreneurial success. This is the real deal, and putting these guys on the air was one of the first ideas that came to mind when I started this show. There are no platitudes here. They didn't invent some app that got unicorn funding from Silicon Valley. No, they aren't YouTube stars that found dumb luck by shooting unboxing videos or watching reaction videos to Minecraft. This is old school sales. Selling something that really hasn't changed all that much in the last 100 years. We're going to talk to two guys who succeed in commercial real estate without being trust fund babies. They'll share what works for them and demonstrate that if you study hard to pass an exam, learn how to sell, and take care of your clients, you will succeed. This is part 2 of a 2-part series. We simply ran out of time to get 2 good stories in the last hour. So let's get the second part done today. So let me introduce everybody. To my side is my brother, Matt Mondo. He calls the Florida Treasure Coast home since 2019 to start a new career in commercial real estate. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me back.
And to my other side is his colleague, Connor Mackin. He works with Matt as well. He's been in commercial real estate since 2021. Let's welcome Connor.
Glad to be back.
And to my third side is my co-host, the producer, the star soprano, and my wife, Mrs. Cynthia Zimmerman.
Glad to be back for part 2.
All right, let's get into it. I'm going to let you talk about your professional biography. Before going into commercial real estate, what did you do in Chicago?
Well, I guess professionally speaking, a little less dramatic than Connor's journey at that point. I guess mine kind of more focuses around on the professional side. So basically, call it the mid 90s, close to 30 years ago now, if we can all believe that. I started out in technology, mainly computer networking. For those listeners, remember this was the era where Microsoft Network started, and people had computer networks. It was the big boom of technology, and people were getting personal computers with Windows 95 and the internet, things like that. So effectively, that was kind of where I started my professional career. I had kind of a knack for technology. Even being young, I could see okay, this is going to be part of people's livelihood at this point to become more mainstream and both for business and people. So it was a good area to, I figure I could start with. I understood it, and it was booming at that point. So you went in for the necessary skill set, learned how to do all the setups and this and that went with it, and started with a being very young, a professional career into it as well. From I guess a professional work standpoint too, I was able to get into a company right away and start off that path.
So this sounds like you really didn't wake up one day and said, I want to be in real estate. I mean, our backstory in our family is our dad was really good at technology. He was really out there with the vision. He was in the PC industry in the mid 80s. He was selling PCs to big retail stores. He worked with CDW, a lot of commercial accounts, some retail stores that are no longer here today. I mean, the computers, you look back in those 80 retro videos on YouTube, and they're big, awful looking things, and they were selling, to today's equivalent of $3,000, $4,000 at a pop. And they couldn't make them fast enough. And I think our dad was really influential in getting us into the tech world.
Right. And then, a brief family history too is that our parents had started a company that was involved in what was called digital printing. And this was a very, very new thing. The 15-second history is that printing was done with what they called offset, which was like big metal plates with ink on it that would, you create copies of something over and over. This digital printing revolution allowed somebody with a digital file, like maybe a drawing file that they made in a CAD program, to be able to print out one copy on the fly, and then the next print could be the next copy on the fly because it was all digital. Huge stuff. We take it for granted today, but back in the mid 80s, this was just mind-blowing that you could do something like that, which carried our technology, a decade later when I started in the computer networking side, that not only could we do stuff like this digitally, but we had these amazing computer networks that allowed us to transfer files from one computer to another without a disk drive. I mean, this again, we're looking back 30 years now, but it was amazing things when we were younger. Now it's just like passe, like, oh, of course, how could you not do that? Well, we, it wasn't not only mainstream, it wasn't mature, it wasn't mainstream. So we were always on the cutting edge of it. It was interesting. People enjoyed it. It was obviously a high level of expense too for a company or a person. So kind of being involved with that, early on when it wasn't where you could just, you could pick up anything now, you could get a cell phone and a vending machine at 7-Eleven now. I mean, it's just like, so, passe, but back then it was incredible. Started off on the technology side. It was enjoyable. It was a growth area. I did legitimately enjoy it for a number of years. But, fast forward about, roughly a decade, there was an interlude where I'll touch on it later, but worked for a robotics manufacturer after 9/11. Again, high technology area. I started grasping into the sales side of things too. And I'm like, you know what? I kind of never thought I'd like sales personally, but it turned out I liked, it was enjoyable. It was a little more of a challenge than the technology. And to be fair, the technology was even kind of exceeding my level. That was growing so fast that I couldn't even grasp onto it in a timely manner, that it was almost overtaking me to some degrees. So after that stint, it seemed a better fit for me to go into sales because I could understand the sales side of it versus trying to keep up with the tech and understanding how I can understand its application, but implementation and support and all that started to kind of exceed my own personal grasp. Plus, sales just seemed like a more exciting and lucrative career as well. So figure about 10 years ago was my first big break into a major corporation. I worked for Ricoh Americas, a worldwide corporation, and they made everything from cameras to, if anybody remembers the Nintendo Entertainment System when we were kids, they made the chips that went inside there. But most people from the consumer side know them as a copier company because it's like you walk into an office, there's a big copy machine that says Ricoh on it. People, in spite of everything else they did, people understood them as a copier company, foremost and front and center to their attention. So with that, I was in a good position because they were starting an IT sales side. And we were, myself and a group of 6 people were literally the first people to come in. And we were the forefront of becoming, from Ricoh going to a copier company, which was in like a dying market. You couldn't really do much more with the copier than what you had. So all you could do is, repeat sales of new machines and of that like. But in the interim with it too, is we started on the ITS side of things. and which was the Rico IT services. And it was very cool. We were kind of like, respected to the point of this is where the company is going to be going to. And we hit the ground running. But
and you're using your back skill, so you can actually speak networking, but you didn't have to actually plug in the cables, but you could leverage your background. Have a normal conversation.
Yes, that's a very, very good way to put it. Like, I had other colleagues that were good sales reps and had zero idea about technology, didn't know what, a router from a switch from anything else too. But having that at least back technology, I could walk into a business and recognize, oh, wow, these guys are on a pretty, very low end network that maybe they do need some help from our service side to upgrade, make things better. Here's your increase in productivity. So on and so forth. So I was able to leverage the background, like you said, with that onto the sales side, and go through the normal apparatus of making appointments and having discussions, but not having to be on that technical level. I went from having a deal, let's say, with the IT manager over to the C-level suite, meaning, that I can deal with the owner of the company or at least the high-level executives to make a business case for it versus a technical case. So it was a nice.
So in theory, it sounds pretty good.
Yes.
IT is growing. This is called, for those who don't know, the industry is called the MSP, Managed Service Provider world, where you would give a company X amount of dollars per month and they would just take care of it.
Yes. And mainly the idea behind that was, again, 30-second history is most companies dealt with what they called break and fix, meaning, okay, I'm working on my computer. I can't connect to the printer. What do? Call the IT guy. They come in, they make a service call to your office, fix it, leave, send a bill, rinse and repeat that. Where Market alluded to was this new service model called MSP, which is called Managed Service Provider, which means basically that your computer in a way is connected to your help desk at all times, where if you have a problem, click on one button and somebody comes online and says, hi, my name's Todd. Can I help you, with your problem here? And they walk you through it, through the magic of like a go-to-meeting or like we're using Zoom or Zoom session or something like that to be able to remote in, help them with their problem, resolve it right away and move on with their day. So the goal of it too was that you'd get instant service for less money. Seemed like a winning combination as well. It's like it's better, faster, and cheaper, like everybody else wants. My personal experience, I had a twofold problem. One was just people's adoption of technology turned out to be much slower than anticipated. They could not break their mental block, if you will, of people using break and fix software, or break and fix approach to IT services. They just could not get past it, even though it was more expensive, much slower. They were just caught in that regiment. Concurrently, I was just caught in the pit of the corporate structure, meaning that Rico specifically was a very large corporation, over 100,000 employees with tremendous resources at hand. And I thought, oh, wow, this is great. They have so many resources. We could, pretty much, own the market at that point. But
and there's a good brand. Isn't there a good brand behind that too?
Yes. Rico's a respected worldwide brand in multiple, like I said, multiple facets of technology, copiers being their most visible to the public eye, but with many other, from chip manufacturing to camera manufacturing to which we were pioneering the services for IT. But what we quickly found out, to belabor the point, was they could not get out of their own way from a management standpoint. They had a very old way of thinking, like a copier salesman, for lack of a better term, and not how a technology person would approach a sale. So trying to clash those two heads, where I'm coming in from an IT side and the management comes in from a copier salesman mentality, it just didn't work. They couldn't clash. So in a matter of I was there for 3 years before they ultimately cut 70% of the workforce overnight. So, it was a 100,000 person company, 70,000 people lost their jobs overnight because of massive restructuring, because they just could not get out of their own way. But in that 3 years, mind you, I really enjoyed working with the company. I worked with great people, but I had 9 bosses in 3 years. I had a new boss every 4 months. So it's like every time we would start, I'd get, come to a complete stop. I would start, come to another complete stop, because there'd be a new change every direction. And I'm thinking to myself this whole time, how am I going to professionally get off the ground if I have to keep doing a start, stop, start, stop, start, stop? Nothing works efficiently with the start, stop mentality. And especially when you would change direction, not only direction, they would change entire product lines overnight. For instance, I had a queue built up for a certain product. I come in on Monday morning, they said, we're not selling that anymore. And I said, well, wait a minute. I had a queue built up of 10 people that want it. And they'd say, well, tell them to buy something else. Like that's not how sales works, guys. But they would just do that because the new boss didn't care. The new boss had a new quota to hit. So I would literally have to come back to my clients and go, well, about that. And then they would just be like, you're full of it. Please leave. Like they didn't trust me. My trust of the client was ultimately lost. And I couldn't go back to those clients. So I'm thinking to myself going, how am I going to succeed when I have the direction of, the misdirection of others, meaning a boss and another boss and a boss's boss. I mean, it does sound kind of like a joke with the movie. If anybody remembers on the listening side, Office Space, that the main character basically had 7 bosses on his side. That was no joke with my organization, as I had a manager and he had a manager and a manager and manager. By the time it got to the top, there were 7 layers of people in between. Well, how am I supposed to get something done with 7 people up top, or vice versa, seven layers down? I'm being directed to do something else tomorrow when I was working on, one direction for 4 months. It was
just pipelines were long, right? I mean, those pipelines were long, and photocopiers you're supposed to sell in like 30 minutes, right? You just go into a van, you show up, you pull a copier out of a van and you go into the guy's office and you demo it and you close it, right?
Yep. Roll it in, just, plug it in. It starts making copies and they say sold and they hand you a bag of money. I mean, that's how it all works, right? But, they didn't understand the IT cycle, sales cycle, I should say. And, that's where I kind of started questioning, going, well, wait a minute, how am I going to have a personal success if I have, all these other people above me dictating where I go, how I do it, with limited autonomy to be able to have success, not only for the organization, for myself, personally, from a financial reward standpoint. That's where we're all in this world, right? We work and we want to have financial rewards so we can, cultivate our families and have personal endeavors to pursue and things of that nature. But I was being heavily stalled by this until they let 70% of the company go. So, hard lesson number 1 is that, man, somebody else, steering your ship, you don't know where you're going to go, and they could crash on the rocks at that point, which ultimately happened to myself.
I forgot. I want to add one more story before we start segueing into your journey to the Treasure Coast. Because you're still in Chicago and you love Chicago weather.
True. Falser words can never be spoken.
So here we are. You got I'll call it the internal pressure of corporate grinding you down.
Yes.
The one story that always sticks with me is the external pressure when a client can't understand your vision.
Yes.
And you have the business case that will save somebody thousands of dollars if they switch from the incumbent to you. There was a story, I will lead this and you will hit it.
Yes.
Where it was the phone provider, like the entire network went to its knees on like a 20 employee firm. So this boss was paying 20 people to sit and do nothing. And you watch this business owner not change their incumbent.
Yes.
Tell us about that one. I think that was the end for you. But you can tell, but I want you have to tell that to everybody else.
No, you're absolutely right. That was the story. I'll say that like Connor had earlier in his discussion, that was a turning point where my spirit was crushed within this industry. Effectively, to balance off what Mark had said, I had an opportunity to work with a client actually in the western part of Illinois, not even the suburbs. It was across the state. So it was a multiple hour journey to go meet with them and so on and so forth. But they had a rather large manufacturing firm, at minimum 20 people in the facility at one time, up to 50, depending on what the workload was for the day. And happened to find out there was a problem. Called up this client, which was their IT manager. And when I called him, he said, well, it'd be a great time to chat because we're currently down right now. And I'm like, oh, well, you sure you want to chat right now? I mean, it seems like you have a problem. He goes, nope, we can't do anything. Why don't we just talk? I said, okay. So we had a discussion what was going on. And the incumbent who was in there was a very small firm with like 3 people. And it was the owner and two other subordinates. And they were scrambling to try to fix this major problem they had with their network. And I ran the calculations and effectively cost the owner $50,000 that day that they were down in business, lost productivity, so on and so forth. Just even the salaries alone were like $25,000 of that, plus all the production they could not get out the door, so on and so forth. So after the network was restored, people calmed down a little bit. I came in with a proposal, and I was, as aforementioned, cheaper, better, and faster. I could have gotten instant service, could have had somebody on site and done it for a lot lower price than what they were paying for on the break and fix model. And after going through the proposal, the owner basically just kind of shrugged the shoulders and said, I'll give the guy another shot, meaning the incumbent. And I'm like, really? After he brought your company, it wasn't like some major corporation. It was one owner that had dozens of employees. That IT guy basically brought your company to your knees, and it wasn't enough for you to move and even investigate somebody else at that point. I came in as a sales call, but he wouldn't move, bottom line. And I'm like, wait a minute. I came in, I did everything right, in the respect, better, cheaper, faster. I fell from the sky like a hero. Here's how we can help you better.
Just like a Marvel movie.
Just like a Marvel movie. And it was met with a And I'm thinking to myself going, if I can't succeed with people's mentalities and changing the direction of their, the way they view things in regard to IT services, what am I doing here? This was the most dire situation. And their business was ruined, and it still wasn't enough for them to not only try somebody else, they gave the guy yet another chance. And I'm thinking to myself going, if this is the mentality of the buyers that I have with this, and mind you, this is going back, a number of years still too. This is a little more mature in today's world in 2023. But, looking at that going, I can't, even with an owner, you can't change their mentality when their business is on fire and they can't see the light to maybe even make a change with this. What am I doing here? It doesn't make any sense for me to continue along with this endeavor. So kind of a turning point to say, okay, what could be a better professional thing for me to do at that point? And then again, fast forward a little bit, a few months later, they did the massive headcount slashing, 70,000 people gone. And it was, okay, what's my next journey?
Right, because you're sitting there going, how are you going to take care of the family?
Correct. And mind you, at this point, I'm married with two younger kids, and breadwinner in the house too. So it's like I got to hurry fast. I don't have that luxury of, well, I'll figure it out when I figure it out at that point. But the journey kind of started to skirt toward this idea of something else. As Mark alluded to, living in and growing up in Illinois, I just had no desire to be there anymore. I'm not a cold weather person, just the whole, environment, if you will, short of family and friends, was just not for me anymore at that point. I'd grown up there, lived there all my whole life, and found really nothing, again, aside from family and friends, found nothing appealing about the area anymore, especially with this, job situation. So I wound up, as my last major careers, I went to work for everybody knows Xerox Corporation at that point too. They pursued me very hard. They wanted me to work for them, and it was kind of an odd job, I guess. The best way to put it was I don't even want to make it sound funny, but I was a glorified toner salesman at that point. It was basically a program they had.
Oh, I remember this. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Basically what it was is that you sold them kind of like again, a few years ago, a subscription service for toner, that they would use use the Xerox service for toner, kind of like on a subscription model that basically everything is now, called Toner Plus, because every subscription model has a plus thrown in front of it now from marketing. But they had hired me to do so. And I was they were very pursuant. They wanted me to work there. And again, I worked with some very good people, but the job kind of never made sense to me. And it was always kind of puzzling, like, why would they want to hire me for this? And my job was to only sell this. And then after about 7 months, I kind of figured out that this program was not sustainable, meaning it worked great if you sold it with equipment. So let's say somebody bought a copier, and then, oh, by the way, how about this Toner Plus program that goes with it too? Sounds great. Let's do it as an add-on because it makes sense in it. But as on its own, to try to have it stand on its own two legs, it made no sense whatsoever. Like, nobody was buying this outside of buying a copier. So I struggled for like 4 months of sales trying to find anybody and meetings and everything too. And I'm like, am I doing something wrong here? And it never worked out. And of course, I get called on the carpet, and it's like, you're not doing a good job, so on and so forth. I'm like, but nobody wants this. Like nobody wants this. And it was no joke. And eventually led to my absence from the company. And again, another parting way was I walked out after I was terminated from Xerox, and I went to another coworker there, kind of turned to me and said, "I didn't have the heart to tell you, but you never should have taken this job in the first place." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "This program's was doomed from the start, literally." And I go, "Oh God, I was duped." In a way, I felt like I was duped for months on end, and we were all spinning our wheels. And he even saw it, goes, "This program makes no sense." And I guess how I could say is I was right all along, meaning the program could not stand on its own two legs. It made no sense to do so. But again, what I found out later is basically some corporate higher up at Xerox said this has to happen, and it trickled all the way down to the dealers where I worked at one dealer. And it was a bankrupt program, meaning that it was not successful on its own merit.
So you had to face the consequences, while somebody 5 or 6 levels up at Xerox really did. They're like, "Oh, it didn't work." Aw.
Right. It probably did not affect them. I don't know who it was specifically, but it probably didn't affect them to the point where they may have just regrouped or hid somewhere, or did a blame transfer, or something happened at that point. But it wound up terminating myself and several other people around the same time too. But what was interesting about it is that day, it was a very, very cold January day. People who may remember several years ago when the polar vortex came through, as they called it, 20, 30 below zero in the Midwest. It was exceptionally cold weather-wise too.
For many, many days.
Yes, many. I think it was a week, like a full week of just bitterly cold weather. It was the happiest ride I had in my life on the way home, because I'm like, I didn't like the job at that point too, because I knew it was no chance of success. I had effectively just, at best the wrong direction, or if I want to be call cynical, there was in the way. But that idiot thing kind of ties into this, coming back to the commercial real estate side of, during this time, I had heard, because again, in our family, they had some commercial property ownership. I was helping them on the side, and I was going, it's kind of interesting. I kind of like this commercial thing. I learned about leasing and leases and everything that's entailed within the sphere of the profession, from a higher level standpoint. And the day that I basically had left, I had contacted back and said, "Hey, what is kind of like looking, going, well, maybe Jeremiah's got an opening here too," because I heard from Jeremiah's name kind of through the ether, through relationships down in Florida. And what I had done is I basically kind of went back to my house, and I'm kind of relieved that I'm not working with Xerox anymore. But I got in contact with Jeremiah, and it just so happened, he goes, "Yes, I got an opening here. You want in?" And I was at a point of my personal life of I've always wanted to go to Florida, and with these pitfalls that have happened on the professional state, I'm like, you know what, this is it. I'm in. I'm in at that point. Albeit I still did try to get a job again in the IT sales in Chicago, just to kind of see where it was. And as fate had put it, I had multiple interviews. I made it to the third step, and then radio silence, dead. No callbacks, no nothing from people, just dead, cut you off, never to be heard from again. So it's kind of weird after having 3 interviews with multiple companies that you get 0 feedback out of it. So I'm like, you know what? This is a sign from the, Connor alluded to earlier, kind of a sign from the universe of things that have happened. Like, okay, time for me to go at that point. So, I had contacted Jeremiah. He said, "Hey, get your license and get going on here." So I signed up for the state required class for real estate in Florida, signed up for that, took the class for a hard week, took my exam, and then went through my state exam, passed that on the first try. Like Connor said too, it's just, you want to pass it once and one and done on your first try. And about 5 days later, I packed up my car and I drove to Florida, and started the new life at that point.
Before we get into the next segment, we wanted to let you know you're listening to Getting Down to Business with Mark Mondo on WVLP 103.1 FM, a community radio station out of Valparaiso, Indiana. Thanks for listening, and let's continue.
But to kind of go back to the spirit of the show here, it was why did this all happen? Well, I was kind of tired of being misdirected from other people that didn't really have an impact in their life. Like me, I being fired, no money. I mean, this is personally a financial tragedy on my end of not getting income. But for them, it was just like, oh, well, I'll go hire somebody else, or I'll just go get another corporate job or something like that. It was minimum impact to them and a devastating impact for me. Well, I couldn't have that anymore. That was like the end of my rope of going, how can I let somebody else lead the direction of my life when I'm perfectly capable of doing so? But, and when you have a job, you're kind of subject to somebody else's whim or somebody else's direction, or, something that could either have a benefit to you, but most often it has some kind of detriment to you, because everyone's looking out for their own skin, right? They want to save themselves, and they could throw you under the bus real easy, which, during these endeavors happened a few times. And I couldn't allow that to happen anymore. So looking at this commercial real estate side, it's scary in a way of, hey, you're going on your own. There's no salary. There's nobody telling you what to do. You have to be self-generating. You have to go out and figure it out for your own.
All right. So here we are. Matt, I want to talk about the story arc. You've hit the bottom career-wise. I remember this. This was tough to watch.
Yeah.
I was trying to connect you to people, and all my connections were just turned out to be rubbish.
Yes.
So you're at the end of the fiscal rope.
Yes.
And now you're going to get in a covered wagon, kind of like Oregon Trail, right?
Yes.
And you're going to take it's still in our family, the 2006 Jetta.
Yep.
It just has essentially a decent working car with new tires, and that's what you got.
Yep. Yep. And it was a little maybe a minor step above Connor's car at that point.
And let's also talk about the support network you have now. I want to impose the belief, or at least prove my point, where you're not Horatio Alger and you just walk in and everything happens. Who's this Jeremiah guy, and how did this Jeremiah guy get into our lives?
Sure. So, Jeremiah currently is our broker. That Connor and I both work for. It's kind of weird, right? We're our own independent companies, but we have to work under a broker from a legal standpoint. So effectively, Jeremiah is kind of like our boss, if you will, when it comes to the real estate hierarchy. Jeremiah actually started about 20 years ago. So I guess, go back a few years, about 15 years prior. And that's all he did was learn, how real estate works. There was this one focus kind of from professional day one, and, ended up building a very successful, call it like a boutique branch of commercial real estate within a localized market. And, from him, he had kind of come in and said, well, he eventually handed me a piece of paper and says, here's how your life's going to be for the next 3 or 4 years at that point. And what they showed is like, hey, get out there and you just got to hustle, and then hustle more. Like, you live, breathe real estate for the next 12 months. And for those next 12 months, you're going to be not broke, but pretty damn near broke at that point too, because you have to do all the things that are needed to be able to get a self-sustaining career, meaning make connections with people. The items that Connor alluded to earlier, make connections with people, know your territory, know where you are, know where things are moving. You got to learn all that, and kind of learn it in a hurry too. So live and breathe it for quite a while, because you're going to be on for this ride. And, it was kind of a quasi area where you had the support of Jeremiah. Hey, I got questions. Can you help me with this? Can you give me guidance? Can you give me direction? Yes to all those, to those questions. But a lot of it was also just self-learning too. Like, hey, get out there, they push you into the street, knock on doors, go meet people, go meet owners at that point. Hey, I'm in commercial real estate, just looking to see what you're doing. Can I help you lease or manage or something with your property? That's what it is. You get on the street, learn on your own. You don't have anybody. You don't have a manager telling you what to do at that point. You have to be self-directed and kind of your own self-fulfilling prophecy at that point, because the work you put in is the work you're going to get back out of it too. So for the first year, effectively, that's what we were doing, is just out there trying to figure the territory, figure what's going on. And hopefully you get some deals involved there too. Hopefully somebody says, yeah, I could use you for a small lease or something like that. And you pick up a few $100s here or a few $100s there to keep you sustaining. But what was interesting is that I'll use Jeremiah's, paper prophecy sheet. Was he goes, look, you work hard for a year, and, come month 13, things are going to start happening. And like magic, it did. After my first year, for some reason, the August month 13, things started happening. My phone started ringing. I started getting phone calls. I had people asking me, hey, you talked to me a few months ago. I'm thinking about doing A, B, and C. Can you help me out with that? And it just started to work. It all started to gel together. Those efforts of communicating with people started to gel. And I'm going, that's pretty amazing. Like, not only did this, the sheet kind of like tell all of what would happen, but these efforts that you put in on your own versus just having, fulfilling a job. You do this, you get paid, you go home at 5 o'clock, call it a day. But in this world, it's of the entrepreneurship, is you got to put in the efforts. And if you put in those efforts, you receive the reward. It almost sounds diluted kind of in our culture right now. Like, you hear it all the time. It's like, okay, mom and dad, whatever you say. But the reality is, yes, the more we put out there in the universe, the more calls, the more connections, the more Connor and I talk to each other about things. All these networks kind of interweave together, and all of a sudden business starts happening. So year 2, I'm getting phone calls back. I'm getting answers. I'm getting more signs out there. I'm getting more visibility. People say, hey, I see your name out there. You're that Matt guy, da, da, da. That goes with it.
Talking about signs.
Yes.
I do think we do have,
Yes. Wasn't there a billboard or something?
you made a stand. I will not have myself on a billboard.
Well, with exceptions.
So tell us about that. Tell us about, I want to hear what I love to hear about this. So you're starting off with 0, you have a support group, you have a hand up, but not a hand out. And I want to get that theme in there. The hand up was, hey, Jeremiah mentoring you. You got family for an emotional support system.
Yes.
Was there anybody else that I don't know of?
Well, let me reiterate there, make that very clear. Family was always a constant through everything here. It wasn't just like, hey, everyone turned their back on you. Da, da, da. Family was always constant to help out, to say, hey, I was able to stay with my dad for a bit when I first went to Florida before getting out of my own place. I was able to get like even Jeremiah would throw, hey, I'm a little busy. Why don't you handle this lease here? I'll throw you a few dollars. So there was always like a little bit of a hand here, not only from a financial standpoint, but from a reward of knowledge. And at that point too, okay, I learned a little bit on this deal, I learned a bit on that deal. You're always kind of in a trial by fire with that. But one nice thing, at least in our world of commercial real estate, is visibility of signage. We put a sign out there. It says, for sale, for lease, Matt Mondo, Connor Mankin, phone number. That's our ticket right there, right? That we have a sign out there, and now we have a visibility to the public about, hey, I saw your sign. I'm interested in this. Can you tell me more about it? That's our kind of our brass ring in our industry here. But one thing that kind of that Mark alluded to that happened is our broker, he's also a developer. He invests in his own properties, buys property, develops it, sells it, continues on those cycles. Is that he also purchased a billboard for income producing, but also in that time converted it into what a lot of people see as a digital billboard. It's the electronic ones. You drive by, you see the messages, change on them every few seconds. Especially if it's near a traffic light, you get stopped there and you kind of like, just kind of looking around, waiting for the light to change. And like, oh, there's the billboard. Oh, look, they're having a sale, at JCPenney's or something like that. But what was nice is because he was the ownership of the billboard, he obviously got to take revenue paying clients on there, but we could also promote our own internal brand, if you will. So kind of the crowning achievement of that was I had sold a particular property that this billboard laid on. And I was the first member, if you will, with I think Connor being a close second, is I did have, even though I swore I wouldn't do it, I got my name, I got my picture up there, my phone number that said, big sold this plaza by Matt Mondo. And it was the plaza that was right above, or in this case, right below where the billboard stood. So kind of a neat, and that passerby that saw 80,000 cars a day passing by it. And it happened to be, again, by a traffic light. A lot of people stopped at night and saw yours truly flashing in lights up out there. But again, that was able to promote our visibility of, hey, these are people in your community that can help you with the commercial real estate needs.
So what skills did you have to take in that, IT is a different skill set. I'm more inclined to IT than sales if I had to put it on a teeter-totter.
Sure.
I'm getting a little more in the marketing and sales inclination, but you had to have a change in mind from tech/employee to what skills are you developing? Connor alluded to developing trust and developing relationships, and I'm maybe feeding the answers here too much, but is it about, one thing I admired about your work when you're dealing with the RICO stuff was you took rejection like a champ. I think most people would just capitulate. You know what? I'm done. I'm out. I would just, because I did the boiler room in 1996. But boy, to do what you did at Rico and have that thick skin, tell us more about that and how that skill translated to that first really tough year.
Sure. I think, I guess I'd say this, to not reiterate, Connor did a great job of kind of taking where those skill set is. But the one thing on called the different side from tech to real estate is that, technology was something kind of everybody had. They had some of it, they had a lot of it. There's a lot of people beating down the door of like, I can sell you something better than this, I can do this for you better, cheaper, faster, whatever the case was.
Oh, like a CRM?
Like a CRM.
I try to do?
Yeah, maybe a CRM or something like that, right? Real estate is, I won't say it's like personal to that individual, right? In our world of commercial real estate, somebody has a property, one of two things is happening to that property. Either it's an owner user, meaning like somebody will buy it and start their business and run their business out of it, or it's an investment for somebody. They buy it, they rent it out to a tenant, they make an income out of it. That value to somebody is, in a lot of cases, is their life. This is how they generate an income. So if you come in and say, hey, I can help you A, B, and C on this property. I can help you manage it, make more money on it. I can help you lease it, maybe get a better rate for people so you make a little more income or a better tenancy. Or, hey, I can help you get out of this property. We can flip it into something that's going to make you even more money. That value to that person, not only is it personal to them because you're dealing directly with the owner, right? Not a manager, not some bumbling guy in the middle of everything there too. It's direct from you to the owner. And if you can provide that kind of value to an owner, it goes leaps and bounds. Going on a personal story with that, I helped a client. He had a property. He had bought it originally for $600,000. I sold it for $1.25 million. We flipped that $1.25 million into another property, bought it for $2.4 million. We flipped that property, sold it for $2.6 million. And this all happened in the span of 2 years. So effectively, you said, you have a success story to show somebody. You started off with 600 and we turned it into $2 million more in 2 years. That's going to get somebody's attention. You can do that for an owner. You have a tremendous value to that person. And you've made him effectively 7 figures. I mean, people don't make $2 million a whole life sometimes. And you could do that for somebody in 2 years. The value of your service is insurmountable. And that's where I think, a lot of, specifically the commercial real estate or whatever you do as an entrepreneur, if you provide that value to somebody, I mean, you're gold to them at that point. Because nobody I effectively kind of think of it as like, paying a tax. You pay a tax, your money goes somewhere, right? It goes into space. Who knows? It gets mismanaged. You have no control for that. But if you can help somebody control the outcome of where their financial being is, the value is insurmountable at that point. Whether it's in CRM, commercial real estate, something like that. That's where you got the hook into somebody. You build up that value, you build up that trust, and you effectively could be, hey, they could be a client of yours for life. You could be like, hey, we've worked with each other for 20 years now, or something like that.
So you have an opportunity for repeat business.
Yes.
It's not like this guy's one and done, or lady, one and done.
I've effectively sold a building twice already. A property I sold a client last year. We're closing this Wednesday. He had bought it for X amount of dollars, and in a year he's making 50% more money than he bought it for in 1 year's time. Those kind of values, if you can demonstrate it to somebody and they go, wow, you did that for somebody else. Can you help me out? Yes, we can at that point. But to translate it back on the entrepreneur side, I could have never have done this having a job. Never in a million years, because you're at a job, you have a function. And if your function is to just, sell A or move B or push C, that's your function at this point. Entrepreneurship gives you a freedom to just develop into a million different facets that you never would have thought even possible. I believe Connor even alluded to earlier, on one building, we got 4 transactions out of one building. A sale, two sales and 2 leases on one building, all effectively within months of each other. That's tremendous opportunity. And in this case, commercial real estate lent itself to it. But that doesn't mean it can't happen in other fields as well. But entrepreneurship is your binding universal attribute to be able to do this. Working for a job, it's never going to allow you that opportunity. Entrepreneurship, all the time.
Well, I know that you're happiest you've ever been since I've known you, and that's been
Oh
over
yeah.
10 years.
Oh
And I
yes.
can just tell because you're allowed to use all of your gifts and talents for this new career. And it just makes me happy that you're so successful
No,
and
I
happy in
appreciate
it.
that. I appreciate that. And yes, you're absolutely right. I wake up every day going, hey, gonna be a good day today. I can go out, I can get this done, I can talk to this person, I can meet with them, I can most things are happy. There's don't get me wrong, plenty of stressful times. I mean, if I don't have a property to list, I'm not gonna be able to get paid tomorrow or
It'll be
next
more
week or 2
difficult
weeks.
because representing the buyer is more difficult than representing the seller, as I understand it. And for those in the audience,
Yeah, I mean, I guess it can be right because if you got to buy, I mean, a buyer, has a purpose, right? They need to buy. They may have a time crunch to buy something, and if you can help them buy something, like I said, with Connor, alluded to earlier, he was able to help a client out, and that client's been a great buyer for him for multiple transactions. You build that trust, and they go out and hey, I have the need to buy stuff to increase my income. You can help them with that. Win-win for everybody at that point. But back to what Cynthia said, yes, I wake up every day going, hey, I can do something good today. I'm not going to get beat up by a manager who's upset with me, and he's upset with me because I may influence his bonus by $500 or something like that for the year. I'm not going to get that kind of attitude. Whereas I can go out and make my own decisions, my own. Hey, I need to go do this today, or how is my time best spent, today, or with this client, or something like that. It's all within your control, and having a job very much limits you to doing so. One more kind of interesting aspect about, specific to commercial real estate that I remember, in a career, let's say I had, 4 good sales in a row in a week or something like that. The owner might get mad, like, I'm paying this guy too much money. Hey, he made a whole bunch. He's making too much money off me. In commercial real estate, I can have, and I've had 3 transactions in 1 week, but those 3 transactions were 3 completely separate people, 3 different entities. They didn't know about each other. I had a very good income week, but it wasn't like I was robbing, quote unquote, one person's pocket. It came from 3 different people's pockets.
so in other words, Jeremiah, who is the managing broker,
Mhm.
he didn't come in there and say, you know what, you're being too successful. I don't
Correct.
want that.
Correct.
I'm going to take some of your commission rates away.
He'll come in and say, why did you have 6 people this week?
But at least he's doing that out of jest because he wants you to succeed too, because he's only paid when you get paid.
Correct. We in our census, we cut a portion back to the brokerage for overhead and also for the broker to make an income as well. And if we're successful, the more successful we are, the more successful he is. And it's a perfect hand in glove scenario versus you're taking money away. All we do is contribute to the pot at that point. So again, in this particular in commercial real estate, it's kind of a reverse from other fields out there. But at the end of the day, it's still the same thing. The more successful we are, the more successful he is, and vice versa at that point too. And for myself and for Connor and other agents, we're working for not only ourselves, but we're working directly for a client or an owner in that case, not some boss that's just going to give you a hard time because they have a power trip or something like that.
Or what we're experiencing in our industry in software and in the CRM world, if you're owned by a private equity firm, they're wanting their pound of flesh before yours.
Yes.
So it becomes dogs fighting for bones if you have different layers in the way. So we're getting closer towards the end of the hour, but not quite there yet. But how would you, if someone wanted to get into commercial real estate, A, how would you mentor somebody? And B, what skills do they really need to get started?
I would, starting with the latter, I think from a skill set, you need 2 things. You need your own self drive, right? I can't teach you drive. I can't put that fire in your belly, so to speak. You have to be able to wake up and be a self-driven person. Many people out there, let's say they have a government job, right? They wake up, they know exactly what they have to do today. They have to punch it at 9. They have to, rubber stamp a bunch of papers. They leave for lunch at 12. They come back at 1. They leave at 5, not 5:01, 5 o'clock, and they're done with their day. Somebody like that, I would say would not have a good chance of succeeding in this. Someone who would succeed has to come in with that fire in their belly and be motivated to go do those things that day. And then not only today, tomorrow, the next day, Friday, Saturday, doesn't matter. But they have to have that fire within them to want to start up and to succeed on their own. Second thing they have to have is communication skills. You can't be timid. You can't be like afraid. It's kind of like a situation instead of like me calling, going, gee, Mark, would you like to buy this toner from me? Like I'm asking for your business. In a lot of cases, most real estate representatives are there to help somebody. Hey, my name is Matt. You're an owner. I'm just kind of curious what you're doing with your property. Are you buying? You selling? Do you need help managing? You could be there as a resource for somebody. You're not there just trying to take money out of their pocket or, try to flim flam them into some kind of like, oh, you got to buy this, or here's the infomercial.
It's 20% off.
It's 20% off. You'd be stupid not to buy this or something like that. In real estate, you're coming in as an automatic value to somebody. They know how to come in, or let me rephrase that. They understand you're coming in not just to sit there and say, oh yeah, I can take your money at that point. No, you're coming in that, hey, I could potentially sell your property, or I can even lease your property and get you even more income, things like that. But you have to know, it's not even saying you have to know how to talk to the person. You just have to know and how to start a conversation with somebody. Be casual. Hey, how you doing? My name is Matt. Commercial agency. Don't know if you work with anybody. What's going on with your property now? Is there any way we can talk about this and just have a discussion?
Okay. Start right there, because I want to end it with a great story.
Sure.
Your story, not mine. We have to remember, if you didn't get to this through part one, tell us about how you went to Mar-a-Lago and one of your colleagues tried to sell the owner of said Mar-a-Lago on real estate. And talk about that no fear factor. And I think that'll be a great way to start wrapping up our story.
Sure. So just the 30-second introduction here with that. A very good client in our office. Mar-a-Lago really is a club, if you will. And he had his son had a birthday party and said, hey, having it at Mar-a-Lago, it's kind of their end of the year function, if you will. Would love to have you guys there. And it's like, heck yeah, we're going to go to Mar-a-Lago. Why not? I mean, it's kind of like a once in a lifetime, maybe twice in a lifetime thing, but it was an opportunity for us to go there and, mingle and have some fun. So effectively, we go down there, we go to the party, met nothing but nice, great people there. Had a buffet like you wouldn't believe, views that were just out of this world. I mean, stuff you just kind of read about, but we were there personally experiencing it. And it was myself, Connor, and a few other of our cohorts joined us too. We all had a great time. But two of our cohorts, and Connor helped me make sure I remember this properly too. They were kind of scouting around as former President Trump was on site too, Mar-a-Lago. They were kind of scouting around and trying to basically slip a little business card in somebody's pocket there, unfazed with fear and all that. And basically, they were politely stopped and said, hey guys, not today. by I would call the secretist of services at that point. But to kind of go back with that, I mean, just a no fear mentality of I'm going to drop my business card in his pocket. You never know what might happen out of it. But that's the type of person, in entrepreneurship, commercial real estate, whatever the case might be, that's a spirit you need to go into. You can't go in fear and timid and what if they don't like me? Doesn't matter. Go out there. Some people are going to like you. Some people are not. You're going to make friends at some point.
All right. Perfect. So we're reaching towards the end of the hour here. And I'd like to thank Cynthia for keeping us on the level and on time today.
You're very welcome. And I'd like to say thank you to Connor and Matt for this really great two-part series on commercial real estate. If you missed some of the show today, you can listen to the replay on Thursday at 1 p.m. Central Time on WVLP 103.1 FM or live stream at www.wvlp.org. And we store the past shows on Mark's website at www.mondocrm.com/podcast, or you can listen to the podcast on your favorite app at any time. We're listed in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and Podbean. Just search for Mark Mondo and the show will come up, and you can subscribe to the show for the latest updates. Thank you very much for spending time with us today, and we'll see you next week.